A 1998 murder conviction against a Bloomington man is the subject of an investigative journalism piece in this month's Esquire magazine. In this conversation with WGLT's courts correspondent Edith Brady-Lunny, freelance journalist Matthew Bremner explains how he first got interested in the case of Barton McNeil. McNeil is seeking a new trial in the death of his 3-year-old daughter.
It's all about coincidence, I suppose. I happened to be covering a wrongful conviction case in Argentina. And in Argentina, they've just opened up effectively, just opened up, I think in the last 3 or 4 years. If branch is the right word, but like a kind of subset of the Innocence Project. So it's under the Innocence Project banner. It shares the same values, but obviously they're all local lawyers. And someone there, I can't remember exactly how it came up, but they kind of put me onto the case and said there's an interesting case that takes place in Illinois. You should just kind of have a look at it. And so I did. And then I sent Bart a letter, a physical letter, and I didn't hear back from him for a while. And then as you see in the piece, something happened in my own personal life, which made me kind of think about it again. And I can't remember if Bart had replied to me before, I don't want to make things up, or after what happened to me. But I think everything kind of came together in one go, and I decided, okay, I'm gonna pitch this around, and Esquire took it up, and I worked on it for a year, effectively.
Yeah, that was my next question, was how long did you work on that? So about a year. And how many people, how many interviews did you do?
I don't know, getting towards 20, I suppose, maybe over that. Obviously, people that appear in the piece, I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe they're about 10 to 12. But, a lot of things on background, for guidance and these kind of things. But yeah, I would say around 20, maybe a bit over that.
So after all that work, what was your impression of Bart McNeil? And did that impression change over the course of your those lengthy phone interviews I know you did, and the several in-person interviews you did when you traveled to the prison to talk to him?
I still speak to Bart quite intensely. There was a period in which, we were almost speaking 2-3 times a week, as you said, over the phone. I met him twice in person. I think Bart is quite he's a particular character. He's eccentric in a way, but he's consistently so. And so I didn't really feel him change. Obviously I got to know him better. I got to know his likes and dislikes, outside of the case. I got to know more about what his real feelings were, from an emotional point of view regarding what happened to him. But in terms of my general feeling about him, I felt that, it remained relatively constant throughout and still does to this day, even after publication. I actually think that Bart is probably reading this article as we speak, because I think someone sent in the mail a printed out version of the piece. So he hasn't read it yet. So it'll be interesting to see what his thoughts are. Although I think everyone else that around him that's read it hasn't had too many complaints. So I think that is a decent sign, at least.
As a reporter myself, who has covered Bart's case for more than a decade, I see a number of things that this case has in common with other innocence cases that move through the court system. And one thing that stands out to me in this case is the fact that he and his lawyers have identified the person they believe is responsible for Christina's death. And of course, that person is his former girlfriend, Masuk Nowlin. Did that stand out to you as well when you were considering taking that deep dive that you did into this case?
Looking at it from a journalistic point of view, a lot of the kind of protagonist, antagonist, cameo characters, if you want to put it in those terms, were all kind of there. Whether I could get to them or not, whether they would speak to me or not, is a different thing. But yeah, I think it made it more compelling because there was someone to go after, someone to ask questions of, and in the end I did get to speak to Masuk, and she had her own kind of version of events. But yeah, certainly I think it made the story more complete. It made Bart's case more compelling, and it made it more. It made it easier in a way to investigate because there were less unknowns. There are a lot of unknowns in this case, but there was at least someone that I could go to for answers, even if those answers turned out to be somewhat evasive in the end.
What was your impression of Masuk Nalan? I know that you were able to have a conversation with her as well.
Yeah, so that was very difficult. I think, back when we were speaking, I hadn't been able to speak to her yet, and I, sent her various letters. I sent her 5 or 6 emails through the prison kind of email service, and she didn't reply to any of them. And then about a month and a half before we were due to close the article, pinged up in my inbox, Masuk Nalan, and she was somewhat kind of, I don't think aggressive is the right word, but somewhat kind of cautious, let's say, kind of aggressively cautious. We had a bit of a back and forth. Unfortunately, with her email system, there was a big delay, so it wasn't as efficient as Bart's. So it was somewhat protracted. She spoke to me for about an hour and a half, over 90 minutes. The first 25 minutes of the phone call were how she didn't really want to speak to me and how she might hang up if I asked her the wrong questions. But anyway, after that was overcome, I was able to put all of the allegations that exist out there, and that Bart had and that other people have, and she answered them in her own way.
The title of your piece ends with a question mark, who killed baby Christina? So McNeil recently lost, as you know, his bid for a new trial in McLean County Court, so he's headed now to the appellate level. Do you feel that your story and the information that you put together through your research and your interviews answered the question of who killed Christina?
Oh, wow. Big question. I think as a reporter, and you know this too, the best that we can hope to do is to really consider the evidence at hand, try our best to find new evidence, whether that's in the form of, physical evidence, or tracking down people, and putting that together in a way which allows, a bit like in a court of law, the readers or the jury to kind of make their own verdict or their own judgment on whether, Barton is innocent or guilty. I mean, I will say that I think that in Barton's case, there's a huge amount of very compelling evidence to suggest that he's innocent. Too much to be discounted, I think. And so, I hope that without getting too kind of definitive on what I think or feel, I hope that the piece in some way can contribute to someone, in the authority thinking, okay, we need to look at this case again, we need to give another shot, because I think at the very least it deserves that, given all of the inconsistencies and strange things that are going on inside this case.
That was freelance journalist Matthew Bremner speaking with WGLT correspondent Edith Brady Lunny.